The brain is absolutely ridiculous and one of the least understood aspects of the natural kingdom. We don't even understand how the brain of a worm works. So how on earth are we meant to comprehend our own evolved grey matter? Mum's faffing with the fire. Sorry. Sit down. Psychology has been officially studied for 130 years and we're still making huge discoveries each year. My mum's a psychologist, so I grew up hearing about all of this stuff, and I really took for granted some of the things that I learned. So, like any responsible millennial, I'm really butchering this week. I decided to start a podcast about it and share the sweet, sweet gift of therapy. I'm sat on the couch with my mum, Sandy. She's a psychologist with over 20 years' experience studying and treating clients. Hi, Mum.
Hi, Adam.
We're going to release a new episode each week talking about a different aspect of mental health and therapy. Can you shut up in the corner making all that noise? This intro's an absolute mess. Hopefully some of you will find it useful. All our episodes are on YouTube if you want to watch us actually sit on our couches. It's getting unbearably warm today by the fire. You said it was nice and because it's damp. I'm sweating.
Are you?
I've got a proper bead on.
Take your trousers off.
Take my trousers off. Head to YouTube for that extra content. The link is going to be on our Instagram bio @OnTheSofaPod. Give us a follow if you like the podcast. Rate us 5 stars on iTunes and please share it with your friends if you learn something new. Put it on your Instagram stories. Let's reach the world. We're going to be bigger than No Such Thing as a Fish soon. This month is What Creates Loneliness and Brain Changes Month. Okay? And this first week, we're going to be talking about what is loneliness. Because we've come out of lockdown this year, and I think a lot of people are feeling very isolated. I'm actually, while you start talking, I'm going to pull up a question that we had on my phone. But, what is loneliness, Mum?
Well, it's isolation, like you've just said, because of the pandemic and all the lockdowns. People have been forced to separate from their work colleagues, their friends, particularly I think your age group and Max's age group. I think that's been really, really tough because
Max is 18.
Max is 18 and first year at uni, and again that's a big development year socially, but of course that hasn't happened, and I'm sure you got lonely at times, Max, stuck in a room in halls.
I have.
Max is doing the cameras for the episode.
So that's the cause of recent loneliness. Prior to that, it can happen for a number of reasons. It can happen because somebody's relationship has ended and they're grieving, or somebody's actually bereaved, and so they isolate themselves. Just like, when an animal hurts itself or gets
to go
hurt,
and heal.
It needs to heal, so it'll go find somewhere as quiet and safe as possible, which might be your home.
What happens in your brain when you are very lonely?
So over a period of time, the chemicals change in the brain. I'm not going to go into the whole science of it because it's too much, but you're not getting as much serotonin, oxytocin, levels of cortisol will rise, etc., etc. So the brain is going through significant changes when they're lonely, which then which will then affect the immune system.
Like we talked about before, these things snowball really fast. When you're releasing less serotonin, you feel less happy, so you start self-deprecating in your thoughts, and then that can trigger like your gut slowing down, then you put on weight, and then it just gets out of control.
It's just all connected.
Yeah.
And we need to be very aware that not just for ourselves, but for our friends and people. What are you two laughing at?
I just dealt with the radiator.
You thought he did something else?
No, I didn't. I gave him big evil eyes on the camera.
So we need to look out for others too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just the elderly. I mean, they are included.
Chronic loneliness as well. It's horrible.
It's not just that. We were talking in another episode about people that come from other cultures, and they could fall into this category too.
Feeling very isolated and lonely. I've got so many questions on this. One of the first ones that keeps coming up is how how come some people, I think I include myself in this a lot of the time, is that you can be surrounded by people and people are like, oh, you've got so many friends, like what a lovely group of friends you've got. You can still feel very lonely even though you are getting that social interaction.
Why is that?
Yeah.
No, but why is that?
Well, I don't know. Is it that is it that you're not
Disconnected?
Yeah, not connecting correctly to them, or
It could be that. It could be, some kind of disconnection or dissociation, or it could be that. It could be, we've talked about the real self and the experiential self. It could be that the experiential chronological self has learnt to put this kind of show on, but doesn't actually feel connected to it because of things that have happened in the past.
Just to recap, if you haven't listened to that episode, the real self is the experiential self is you who's gone through time and is 25, 50, whatever. You have your chronological age, and then your real self would be the you that might be stuck at any big life milestone. So it could be 10 years old or 20 years old, and there's a big disconnect in the knowledge between the two selves that you have inside.
Yeah, that's it.
So how does loneliness like start? Where does it like begin? When does it just be because obviously we don't see people all the time, and at what point does it cross from I miss my friends to I'm really lonely and isolated?
I think I'm just thinking about the pandemic. I think when you in that situation, you're actually being told you can't see your friends. So that it's outside of your control, pretty much.
How do you notice when it's a problem? Yeah, like what happens if you ignore this feeling? When is it like a problem? Or loneliness is now I've got issues because of it.
I think it becomes quite problematic when it upsets the whole mechanism from sleep and all the rest of it, and then your confidence can start to diminish quite quickly, and then your self-esteem. So the whole system is in crisis. The whole system is in the red zone.
When we talk about the traffic light system of red being high anxiety and green being low anxiety,
and it's just going out of control, and anxiety is increasing. Invalid thoughts, negative thoughts are increasing, and it is a system going out of control, a body going out of control.
I take a really keen interest in like how evolution like influences stuff. So like we're talking about depression in a few weeks, and I looked into why do we get depressed? Because nothing happened. No negative thing that happens to a human being internally is by accident. Like it's usually because we've evolved to develop this skill to protect ourselves, and loneliness is such a good motivator in the same way as boredom is and hunger is a great motivator to get food. Boredom is to stimulate your brain, and we are more likely to survive if we're social, if we are with a tribe. And so loneliness is
alien.
It's an uncomfortable feeling intentionally by design to try and motivate you to see people and to interact with people. So I guess that's why if you are with people but you don't feel connected to them, it's the same emotion that you don't feel like you're getting that validity from those relationships, and why if you ignore that motivation your brain's giving you, your brain's deliberately making you a bit depressed, lonely, to try and encourage you to interact. And then if you ignore that, it's not getting the expected serotonin and dopamine and stuff, so then you're just depressed, like you're just low, because you didn't acknowledge the fact that
you needed to change your behaviour.
You need to make that behavioural change, I think.
Yeah, oh absolutely. I think that's a really good point about evolution as well.
How can external triggers make you feel lonely? Or isolated might be a better word for this.
Well, Boris Johnson
telling you can't see anyone.
For good reason, I understand that.
Absolutely.
So how can other people isolate you? I think again, if somebody is being punitive towards you.
What do you mean by punitive? Sorry?
Like not very nice and
Derogatory.
dismissing, derogatory. For somebody who has got low self-esteem and confidence anyway, that could throw a real spanner in the works. That could, and they're like, I'm just not going out anymore. It happens a lot with teenagers at school where they're getting bullied or they're not flavour of the month, and they'll just stay in their bedrooms
and isolate themselves, and then actually the bullying is the problem, and then they're isolating themselves, and then that turns into depression. But the source of the problem was originally the bullying.
Exactly.
Got you. And what about internal triggers, like personal beliefs that can isolate you? Is that back to like the confidence thing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, don't forget that some people actually like to self-isolate. They like their own company. Particularly people that healthy people that are on the autistic spectrum. A lot of those clients have said to me, I liked the lockdown.
Yeah, I like that time for myself as well,
because I didn't have to, because it's hard for some of those people to socialise. That's not within their remit. So it's been really nice for them to isolate. But for others, not so. But yeah, the cause can be anything.
That just stops you socialising in a healthy way.
Yeah.
I guess the most important part about this week is what can we all do to change it? Because it can be quite hard, I think, when you're feeling really isolated and lonely to then get out of that slump.
Yeah.
And like the question that we got when I asked for questions for the podcast, one of the really specific ones was, we've been in lockdown, how do I learn to re-socialise? How do I get back into big groups of people again and go to concerts hopefully soon? That's like, I mean, all they're kind of different questions, but what are things we can do?
Educate. Just look at a few YouTube videos, do a bit of reading about body language and communication skills.
So trying to, like, the first thing is understanding communication and trying to get back to like learning about how to socialise, the technical stuff. What about building confidence in that area though?
Remembering what you used to be like. Did you used to be confident when socialising? Well, yeah. So you've just got out of the habit. And once you start the flow of it again, surely the skill will it's in there. Surely it'll just come back. But if you didn't have it before and this has made it worse this time, then educate yourself. Learn. That's what we're meant to do, learn.
What about social anxiety? Because that's going to be a huge issue for people who have always struggled socially, and now they're feeling really lonely, and now they're having to go back into these scary social environments to try and re-socialise.
That's happened to a lot of young people at school, actually, a lot. They don't want to go back to school. They were socially anxious anyway, and this has just added another layer.
Of course.
But they're lonely.
It's really sad, isn't it?
So it's about exposure, but gently. Not, well, I'm sorry, but you're going back to school on Monday and that's it, which some people have done.
Of course.
But I think there needs to be a little bit more sensitivity to that.
So maybe meet a friend for a walk.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then meet two friends for a coffee. And then go for a kickabout in the park.
Yeah.
And like build it up, you think? Yeah,
I think that would really, really help. And knowing that they're going to be there when you go to school.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And about the big crowds thing, I've heard people say like, oh, I don't know, I feel going to big crowds again. Personally, I'm of the belief that like stuff, we're creatures of habit, and as soon as we start doing stuff again, it will just go back to normal. But if you're really anxious about spending time in a crowd, is kind of doing what you said and thinking back and being like, I never used to be worried about crowds. And
what am I worrying about specifically?
Yeah, exactly.
Am I worrying about the virus, or what is it? What is it I'm worried about? Because if it's the virus, I'm assuming that everyone will be checked before they go in with a flow test or whatever. There'll be some sort of mechanism in place to help us.
So try and rationalise.
Yeah.
And then finally today, there are a lot of people that either are living in isolation for whatever reason, they're far away from people, they live in remote areas, or the elderly is a really big one as well, and or parents if you've left home. What's a really good are there any things we can do to like make people who are physically isolated for whatever reason feel less lonely?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well, because quite a few people that I have worked with in the past are elderly, but their families have moved away and they are really lonely. So what I try to do is organise, there's some great charities out there that will make visits to the home, and if the person's able physically, I've got like contacts with taxis and all that sort of thing. I'll arrange for them to be collected by a specific person and taken to the place where they have dinner and make things and that sort of thing.
So doing social events.
Yeah, and also there are other organisations that will arrange a phone call.
So, but do you think like if I was to try and, I don't know, call a friend who's living in the arse end of nowhere and they're really alone, just having a conversation with them is
your age group, that would be very different, wouldn't it? But
well,
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, just making sure that you call people and talk and ask them how their days are going and things like that.
Yeah, and maybe writing letters. I know that's an old-fashioned thing.
I've started doing that with a friend of mine.
Yeah,
pen pals.
I think that's so nice when you get a handwritten letter of somebody.
Another thing that one of my friends, Rye, inspired me to do this years ago. He called me one day for no reason, and people just don't do that. He called me and I was like, "Hi, what's up?" And he said, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" And I was like, "Oh, what? Like, how can I help? What do you need?" Because people usually call your phone
for a purpose.
They want something, or they need something, or they want to ask you something, or they want to book something, whatever. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm just calling to check you're okay and how's your day going." And I'll always remember it. I think it was absolutely fantastic. So I make a list in my phone of everyone that I care about in the world, and then every day I'll just random that list, and whoever's at the top, I'll be like, "I'll call you today and I'll just say hello." And I got out of the habit recently, to be fair, but it's something I did for a long time, and it was so nice because it was nice for me.
Yeah,
because I'm connecting with people that I wouldn't think to call this person, and it's really nice too. And also it's nice for them to get a random call from someone they haven't heard from a while and just be like, "How's your day going?"
I mean, if you think, and that's a brilliant idea, but if you think about Nana, she was very lonely towards that period of her life, but I've always phoned her every day anyway, but I'd maybe phone her twice a day.
Yeah, I make sure that person really feels connected to their family. Great, that's it for this week. Next week we're going to be talking about like the big things that can cause loneliness, like moving house, and how all these things can manifest and end up isolating people. So hopefully, I wouldn't say you enjoyed this week, it's been a heavy week, but hopefully that was interesting, and we'll see you next week for a little bit more on loneliness.